Right, let's get started. So what are we going to discuss? A little while ago, 2 weeks to be exact, Anthony Hook came to me and he said, I'm doing this cool thing with MVC and I just need to hook up the Social Connected module, so could you just give me a hand? I said, sure thing, let's do it. But Social Connected is a web forms module. And this is, you know, a lot of the modules we have for Sitecore have not been ported yet. So, do you mind if I turn this off? No. There we are. Can everyone still hear me? Yeah. That's good. They haven't been ported yet. And this is a process that will take a little while before we get everything in place. But I thought, let's have a look at it, see what we can do. Mostly because Anthony needed it urgently. Also, after looking at it, I realized that Social Connected would be a very low impact. I wouldn't have to do much. That was my thought anyway when I said yes to Anthony to fix his problem. And secondly, there's a high value. So on the surface, Social Connected looks like a couple of buttons that you put on the page, but it has a lot of mechanics talking to social networks and synchronizing the information about the users into the Sitecore membership system. So there'll be a low effort and a high win. That was the theory anyway when I started. So an initial setup: install a Sitecore 6.6, install Social Connected, the web forms module, and configure a couple of Social Connected connectors. So you have to set up some Facebook application or a Twitter application, so you have something to authenticate against. Or you could do LinkedIn or Google+. Those are the four that come out of the box with Social Connected. There's also an example of the Hive network connector. I didn't check that out, but I'm assuming that that worked just fine. And you can add your own connectors on Social Connected if you need that. I'm not going to cover the setup here. It's all in the instructions for the Social Connected module, and it's very easy. So after installing Social Connected, there's 4 layout controls that appear in your sublayouts folder. 4 of them have to do with logging in with the different networks, and 2 of them are a little button. And a little bit of rummaging around in the ASCX files that come with this will show that the connectors either do a login or attach when you click the little logo. And the others, Facebook Like and Twitter, the tweet button, this is just a piece of JavaScript and a little bit of DMS information so we can track it. So when I was listing the challenges of doing a conversion, I had 2 problems on my slate, and it seemed like this I'm going to be done in no time. There's first of all, I needed to find out how can I actually, in web forms marketeers, you'll have a click event on an image or a link, and you'll pick that up on a postback, and then you'll do something with it, and in this case you do the login action. It doesn't really work that way when you do MVC. You could have a click event that went to the controller rendering that you put on the page, so that you create a little controller rendering that is a button, but it's awkward handling it that way. Well, that's what I felt. For this instance, it would be awkward to do a postback and then have 2 login actions that listen to either get or post. So I went with another option and centralized all the events through a single route. Well, that's not true, 2 routes, but so that's an MVC route, a standard ASP.NET MVC route. Does everyone here understand the difference between a controller and a controller rendering? in the context of Sitecore and MVC?
No.
No, you. Okay. Well, for those who don't know, a controller rendering is basically a standard MVC controller, where the controller rendering will render the result of one of the actions on it. So in Sitecore, you define a controller rendering, and on the controller rendering, you specify which controller and which action you want to execute. The result, the view result being returned, will be rendered in the placeholder where you put it. A normal MVC controller is activated via a MVC route, so a URL is routed to the controller and action. Is that clear? Super. So I went with the second option for signaling to Sitecore that someone had clicked something. So there's, compared to the web forms, there's a little bit of a disconnect between what we actually render on the page and how we handle the feedback from the user. The second thing I came across was a little bit new to me, because I'm not I haven't done MVC for many years. I'm sure there's some MVC specialists in the crowd here who say, "Ah, I knew that." But doing a response redirect, as we do willy-nilly in web forms, is not optimal in MVC. Ideally, we'd use a redirect result to signal to MVC that we are going somewhere else. Inside the Social Connected module, deep in the belly somewhere, it does redirects. And I looked, can I change this behavior? And it just seemed like a little bit too much of a hassle. I left it as is, and it works. And of course, my controller needs to return something. So there's something called an empty result that you can return for your controller. There's probably someone who's going to say, "Oh, you've done it all wrong," but keep in mind that I tried to keep this conversion of the module from web forms to MVC to something simple. I didn't want to go all out. I didn't want to pull all the wires out of the engine and try and rebuild it. I just wanted to do a very quick lift and shift. So I had my first shot at doing it, and it was quick and dirty. I basically scraped the HTML and just threw in the logic that was in the user controls. A little bit messy. It worked, and I was very happy with my quick win. I think I'll just show you what my quick win sort of looked like. For this occasion, I'll put together a little website, and let's just see here. Let's do like this. Look at this beautiful, beautiful website. Well, it'll be there sooner or later. To check that we have internet. So, this is my website. You probably recognize it. It's a Bootstrap. How many of you use Bootstrap? Does anyone use Bootstrap, or is that just bad style? No? 2, 3 hands. A few people use Bootstrap. I'm not a designer. I don't know if it's good or bad, but I think this looks cool. So, hello, username, button. So these are the 4 buttons for connecting to a network. And here's the like and the tweet. And if you just hover over this one, you can see it says login with Facebook. Can everyone see this? Is it too small? It's fine. And I can click on this. It's a little bit slow because it's via my phone that's over there, and we are in a basement. So feel free to connect with me on Facebook. So just going to log in here, and we're back. hello, Kern Nightingale. And already here you can see Sitecore Social Connected doing something for me that I'll probably have to do myself if I wasn't using. It's connected my real name from Facebook to my user in Sitecore. So there is a Sitecore user now, and the username will be Facebook _ some random ID. But it has connected me to create a user for me and connect my name. And there's all sorts of configuration you could do to synchronize your profile parameters, depending on what you ask for. When you set up your Facebook thing, you can ask what data you want to have from the user. And you can see I have my like button here. So, hey, we like this. And, so this was actually what I got out of the first attempt. It didn't look as pretty, but this is the final product. But it only took me a day or two to get it all sort of happily thrown together. And let's have a look here. Do a little bit of Git. How many here uses Git? We have a little bit of a discussion in the office around Git. Oh, there's one keen guy over here in the corner. Robin uses Git all the time. Perhaps not. So I'm just going to go back in time with Git to a time when it's 2 weeks ago or so. You can see this is I added tweet and like renderings. Woohoo! And then we'll just do like this, start up the solution, my user group presentation, and just close these, and whoa. So last time I had a couple of demo fails, and they were actually built in as something I wanted to show you. This is not one of them. I blame this thoroughly on Visual Studio. I actually think this is something to do with the test explorer. Shall we see if I can reproduce? Ah. Well, here we are. So if you ignore some of the other controllers, I'll show you this one here. So I created a social connected controller and basically threw everything in here. So you can see, excuse me, Jason. Thank you.
Okay, do you want to turn your mic on? I'll just slowly bring the volume up.
No, that's all right.
That's all right. Okay.
Let's have a look at the generic connector. So I immediately knew that I could, all of these buttons for logging in, they did the same thing. I could run them through the same generic thing. Basically just outputs a little bit of data and runs it out through a view. Is there anything here I need to explain? Check, are we authenticated by looking at whether the context user is authenticated? Build a model, put some information in there about what network we are trying to connect to and whether we are authenticated, and the little text whether we are, actually I'll do like this, there we are, whether we are attaching or logging in. And then I also just plugged in here the actions for logging in. I think logout sort of wasn't on the board at this point, but as you can see, I just merrily put everything in here in one big pile. Thought this was great, and I said to Anthony, just clone my Git repository and check out this branch, and then you're rolling. And Anthony was very happy and started using that straight away. So I was sitting there at my desk being smug, reading my Twitter feed, and then this came in. Yes, it's true. I probably did need some tests and some help. I don't know if you can see the last bit of the conversation that I had just been through a review, and that was I've had a hard time there. So, but I wasn't going to let it rest. I guess the troll had his way. So I started thinking about how could I refactor this pile of code that I had just put together. And the first thing that came to mind was trying to decouple the hard dependencies, because that would be an obstacle for doing some tests. And I'll come back to the testing a little bit later. Now let's just, if we're just talking how did I get from social connected web forms to social connected on Sitecore MVC, the story is over. And as you can see, I've only been doing this for 15 minutes. So the journey sort of extended a bit. I think we call that scope creep. I thought I couldn't really show up here today and just with what I had here. So I needed to get rid of the dependencies that were sort of tied in with the code. So that meant creating some abstractions and doing some dependency injection. For this, I went down the road of poor man's DI because I didn't really have a full dependency injection for my controllers. I think that's another story that we'll definitely do at the user group another time. But for now, I just did the sort of the cheap version. I'll show you sort of what it all looks like. So let's just do like this, and like that, and now we're going forward in time with Git and opening the same project again. Right. And as you can see, I have my controller here, and all of a sudden it starts out with a lot of I this, I that, and I link manager, I rendering context, all sort of things that before they were sitting inside the code, and now it's just some interfaces being passed into the constructor. The poor man's DI have a parameterless constructor that basically calls with some default objects. So, it's not like a best practice way of doing it, so just so we have that straight, but it is one way of doing it. If you're just concerned with being able to test, which was my main concern because that was what the troll was irritating me with, then this will do. So you can see I have the option of giving my controller some different dependencies in my test scenario. In the code, nothing much changed. I still have my login down here at the bottom. Now you can see it's using this authentication manager instead of going to Sitecore context user. So I've got, in this scenario here, I haven't got a hard dependency on anything in Sitecore kernel. Also, the user manager from Social Connected is now just an interface. In the ideal world, these interfaces would be present in Sitecore kernel and in Social Connected. That is, of course, something I'm battling with, sort of an internal battle. But I'll show you in the meantime what we can do to sort of mitigate this. Oops. Yeah, again, you can see nothing really changed. I'm still doing all the same work. It's slightly less messy, but still, I think there's a lot of code here in this one class. I don't know. What do you guys think? Am I being too picky here?
Can never be too picky.
Okay. At least someone has an opinion. Right. Let's close this one down again and then go back and see what the slides say. So the next thing I wanted to talk about was abstractions. And when looking for things that needed to be abstracted, there was a pattern appearing. There was some I call them the usual suspects: static classes, singletons, objects without interfaces, and I went down the route of doing wrappers. And this is very much similar to what Microsoft did with System Web Abstractions in 2008. They had a library that didn't have interfaces and everything, and they needed to sort of rearrange things so that they could start doing some proper testing with things in System Web. So I think the one we all think about is HTTP context. They introduced HTTP context wrapper and an HTTP context base class. There's a little bit of discussion whether you do abstract base classes or interfaces. I'm not fussed. I just use interfaces. Does anyone have an opinion? Good?
I prefer abstract classes.
Okay. Well,
That's when you can put more code and then just reuse it all over the place.
that is true. That is true. You can do that. If you look at what Microsoft did, they just put in the code that says throw exception not implemented. Sorry. But so I think that there is something there. I don't know. It's not something that I guess we need to decide on today. The wrappers will still be a problem for testing because I'm moving a piece of code into a wrapper, and then it's the wrapper I can't test. But my shim of untestable code becomes smaller and a smaller problem. So I do think that it's a valid approach. I'll start being able to test my business logic, and again, in the ideal world, these wrappers and abstractions should be maintained by Sitecore. So, and also just to clarify, these abstractions are not specific to Sitecore MVC. These are quite, it's a generic thing. And I just want to show you a couple of examples of what I did. We can take them from here. Close that, didn't I? Actually, we'll wind the tape again. Woo! There we are. UI tweaks. It's an internal joke. This is about winding the tape. There was a discussion a long time ago where someone described it like you were able to go backwards and forwards in time, like on a tape, on a tape. I don't know. I thought it was funny. It's lost here. I'm not a stand-up comedian. I'm just presenting. So, what am I doing? Yes. Recent projects. So you can see something happened here under abstractions. I'm quickly going to hide this again. This is the surprise. So I did some abstractions for different things. I think if you use Sitecore on a regular basis, you recognize a lot of these. Perhaps not the last one, but for instance, the database. We all know what the database is. I'll give you two examples. So translate there's a static class that does translation, and I basically just took all of the methods on it and put them in an interface, and then I did a cheap and cheerful wrapper that just calls the static class, so I cannot instantiate something that will proxy through to what was previous a hard dependency. So that's one example. Another example of wrapping something could be where it's perhaps a context object. I'll do this one. This is fine. So the normal Sitecore rendering context has it will give you a context item and a rendering. And in my wrapper, no. In my wrapper, I'm able to, instantiate with a internal rendering context that I can then forward every call to. So that's sort of how wrappers and interface abstraction work in this setup. Are there any questions to this? Yeah?
So these abstractions, are these come in sort of in a later version of Sitecore?
I'm pushing as hard as I can to, move on this. Otherwise, we'll all be doing the same thing. You'll go home tonight, you'll check out my Git repository, and then you'll start putting this down and putting that in. So it would make sense for it to end up in product, but I work in a team of solution architects, and the product team, they have the power over the product. So,
okay. Has anyone created sort of something on GitHub, like abstractions for this?
Yeah, these abstractions are on GitHub. There's a reference on the last slide. So, yeah. So they should be very soon. Anyway. So I can't promise you that they'll end up in the product tomorrow, but I think it's going that way. That's what I think. Any other questions on the concept in general? Is anyone doing something similar? Is no one using abstractions to get rid of hard dependencies? Oh, there are some people. Yay! Are you going to talk about it, Lee? No. Okay. Not tonight, anyway. So I thought I'd just show you that. As I said, all this code is on GitHub already, so feel free to put it down, tear it apart, and give me some feedback on what you think. I didn't set out to sort of, for instance, with the iDatabase, it's a very complex beast. I didn't set out to do a wrapper for everything on database. I just did what I needed. So, and I think that is the approach to take. Not try and abstract Sitecore completely away. Just do it for the pain points that you have. Otherwise, you'll be abstracting rather than producing the code. Second point on the refactoring sort of thing was single responsibility principle. Yes, I did just pour everything into one big pile, and it wasn't optimal. So I singled out sort of two responsibilities. One was rendering buttons. I didn't bother distinguishing between whether they were a tweet or a connect button, and I then moved the authentication into its own controller. I also did some work to move away all this, these settings that the buttons were relying on into a settings provider. So just trying to sort of separate the code into two different areas. I'm not going to educate you on these sort of patterns. I'm sure that you use it every day when you decide how to slice up your code. If not, call me and my team and we'll come out and talk to you.
Free, right?
Possibly. Have you got some good clients that you want to do a project with?
Loads.
Okay, well then, possibly. First of all, authentication control, again, it's the same pattern, a little bit of Pullman's dependency injection, then a login and a logout. And as you can see, all of a sudden, the size of the class is a lot smaller, there's less stuff in there, it's focused on what it needs to do. Secondly, we have the rendering controller. It does a little bit more, but not a lot, and I guess, I don't know if you got a feeling before for how large the class was. What is this? I need to fix something? Well, we'll see. It probably will surprise me. Anyway.
You need a unit test.
My unit tests, I'll probably need to fix them later on. So, yeah. As you can see, I split it up into something that renders buttons, something that authenticates me. You could argue that I also split it up to something that gathers the configuration needed for this. I'm sure that you could refactor this even more, but I haven't had my second review, so I'm happy with this. And also, of course, it's today. I'm doing the presentation now, so there's no more time. We can just do, this may be fun, if we just do like this. So you can see 6 hours ago, I did a UI tweak. That's what we're looking at now. So this is how close we were to the deadline. Is it like that when you guys do presentations for clients and stuff? Or is it less than 6 hours?
We're already prepared.
You're already prepared. That's good. So I expect to, what's the name down there? Sorry. Well, you'll be doing a presentation soon in the user group? Yeah. I'm not kidding. I'm still hoping for people to contact me and say, I would love to do a user group presentation and I have this very interesting topic. And again, it doesn't need to be 45 minutes. It can be however long you think it will be. We'll just, if we have something that's 15 minutes, we'll just have more of them. Right, I lost track of where we were. Okay, so I also wanted to talk about testing because that's why we actually started extending beyond. Well, someone's laughing here. This is my way of trying to illustrate my understanding of a unit test and an integration test. Does anyone disagree with the picture I've drawn up here?
This looks more like an end-to-end test to me.
Well, it depends on. I didn't draw the table and the cutlery over here, so. I know that integration test and system integration test. Where do you put the barrier? I think a lot of people, when they do unit tests with Sitecore, they actually end up, I don't know if you noticed that I did a green and then some red in here. They end up in a murky area where they are running unit tests, but they're trying to shake off the dependency on the Sitecore database and the items, and it's difficult. You have unit test runners that run under IIS, so that you have an HTTP context and you can actually spin up all the Sitecore mechanics. So what I, of course, did here was try to show you a way of getting rid of the mechanics. So you can actually just run unit tests the way they were intended, fast, in your UI with your CI environment. So without having the entire sandwich as drawn up here. So I don't know why I put this in. This was just because I spent too much time on my presentations. You all realize this, of course, but I thought let's put in a triangle for anyone who's really didn't. Unit test, very simple. Integration test, not so simple. So that was a little illustration. This is my big slide. This is the one where you also. The rest are going to be boring. Slides, not presentations. Sorry. So sorry, I just need to read my notes here. Oh yeah, and by the way, this it's not a sausage, it's a little pickle, and it wasn't sort of a reference to gherkin or cucumber or any of those fancy things that I know some of you guys are using, but I thought that's just what I put in my fancy sandwiches.
Saying if you don't unit test, you get yourself the right form of pickle.
Come on! Loving. So, unit test. Things I want to test. I want to test what I've done. I don't want to test what Sitecore's done and all that stuff. I definitely don't want to test whether my phone over there can connect to Facebook. That's just something I do when I demo it. Yeah. So. Right, I'll give you 2 examples of tests, and this is actually referring back to the joke in the tweet we saw on an earlier slide, where it's a fact that you need unit testing. That's actually because I was going on about XUnit. I know that NUnit is the big thing, that's the one that everyone uses, but I thought it would be interesting to just see what the differences were. I couldn't tell you today which is better, but I think from the point of view of being supported, NUnit may be your choice. from the sort of unit testing purist, forcing people to do the right thing, then XUnit goes a long way. And then it has some different, a different vocabulary. Oh, I'm still looking at the website. We're going down to see some tests. So I did some tests. I haven't done test coverage or anything, so that's probably appalling. But I did do some tests that illustrated how I use these abstractions. So in my test scenario, I set up fakes. It's not fake. Stop, come up, call it what you want. With fake it easy, it's called, well, a fake. And you can see here I have some behavioral testing. Login should login user when not authenticated, which sounds obvious, but so basically I do some arranging and then I call the login and then I test whether there was a call to login user with the network name. So I know in the belly of this controller here, when you call the method, it needs to call the connect user manager. Now, if I had used the connect user manager that comes with Social Connected, it has plumbing to go off to some well, first it will talk to the Sitecore database to find some settings, then it will run off to Facebook or wherever. I didn't want that for my test. I just wanted to know whether my code was actually calling their code. My people talk to your people. And oh, sorry about that. The same goes for the next test. Just testing whether my code is actually calling through to these. I could say that my login doesn't do much else. There's actually a subtlety here. When you're logged in, it should attach the user rather than log it in. So go off and log in with the social network and then attach to the current logged in user. Aha! So when I do controller login and I'm authenticated, I do that here by stopping out a test user. Then it's the attach user that must have happened. Actually, it may have been clearer if I had moved this down on the next line here. Does that read better? Does anyone care? Okay, that's fine. Because if I don't want the answer, I shouldn't ask the question, isn't that right? Yeah. But we'll move on, and I'll show you a different kind of testing that I also did. And this is more of a state test. So the generic connector should return a view result. So ideally when I call the generic connector method, which is an action method, I don't want to have a redirect result back, I don't want to have an empty result back, I don't want to have null back, I want to have a view result. So here I'm testing not behavior but state. Am I really? Well, actually I'm thinking, yeah, I think I am. I am. You could also plunk something in at the top of the method and try and measure it when it comes out again. Right, and I think that's actually, I don't know if my examples are clear enough. Has anyone learned anything about abstracting and doing unit tests in a Sitecore environment from what I've just told you? It's good. So I don't want to talk about integration testing because we are 40 minutes in and my timing is spot on perfect. So if I just skip lightly over this, because we have always been doing integration testing with Sitecore, unless we've been doing abstractions, of course. There's been some very creative ways of handling this problem of having hard dependencies of Sitecore kernel. And I put some links in here, they're very easy to follow. The two blog posts. one by Mike Edwards and one by Alistair Deeney, and they talk about how to run Sitecore under test in sort of a unit test scenario. But they do sort of say, you know, take everything in the kitchen sink and put it under your arm and then off you go. So this was an attempt not to have to do that. I can hear whispering. There must be a lot of questions now. Oh, by the way, the code for this, if you want to see it, if you want to nick all of the abstractions or whatever, or just see how I did them, then it's on my public GitHub repository here. So are there any questions?
I have a question.
You have a, yeah?
What do we use for monitoring errors?
That is a good question, but I will give you a hint. When it says we, it's we as in Lee, and not we as in me. And I hope everyone understood that. So, are there any other questions? There must be. Yes, who's talking down there?
Jorge.
Yeah.
So, why would you use a notice that on the Sitecore MVC API, there's a cycle controller. So,
we'll do it without the microphone.
Okay, fine. So why would you use just a standard controller instead of the Sitecore controller?
That is a good question. It's totally unrelated to what I've been doing here, but I will answer the question. So the Sitecore controller is the controller being invoked when you have an item path as your root.
Right.
And the Sitecore controller will basically has a default action called index, and that default action will call the mechanics that read layout configuration and generate whatever result is coming off your layout.
Right.
So if you're doing a controller rendering, you're not planning to read the layout configuration and do all sorts of things. You're planning to do a component. If you're doing a controller that is activated by a custom root, then you may want to do something similar to what the Sitecore default controller is doing. So you could inherit from it, and then you can set, on your root you can set a parameter called SE item, which is the path to whatever item should be used as the context item. If you're routing to a controller that does something that does not show a, layout configuration based thing, then just do your own thing. And if you want to do something on a standard MVC route where you're generating a component that then flies into a placeholder in Sitecore, you should check out some very cool stuff that I've done called the, what did I call it? Kevin, you reviewed it recently.
The injection view stuff.
That one. What again?
The injection view controller.
Okay, see, I did actually write that. But it changed name a couple of times. So, yeah, it's difficult. How do you, in a short way, explain what I just said? Custom root, controller, generate something, and the partial view flies into a placeholder. Yeah, it's the injecting controller magic. I thought it was cool. If you have some sort of legacy site that you want to bring into a placeholder and just have Sitecore do sort of window chrome for you, that would be an easy option. Didn't I do a presentation on Sitecore MVC and the music store? Yes, I did. That was it? No one listened. Thanks for hopefully listening. My name is Kern, as I said. My email address and Twitter handle is there. So please tweet me so I can look at my K-score and just say, what's this about? Yeah, thanks for listening.